Hey EA, hey Activision, hey Ubisoft, I want you all to take note. This is how you do an annual video game franchise. What's up guys, Acerthorn here, and welcome to another video game discussion video. I do these analysis and discussion videos on a regular basis, so if you'd like to see more of them, hit that subscribe button to stay notified. It seems these days that the only games that any AAA game company actually cares about are those they think they can milk with annual installments. But even then, that isn't enough. They also have to have about a half a dozen editions of each game with prices going up to $250, and then charge pay-to-win loot boxes on top of that. Well, if there's one AAA franchise that seems to do all of that, but somewhat in moderation, it's the WWE 2K franchise. Sure, they have annual installments, sure they have multiple editions, but if you're going to have these things, I'd say that WWE 2K provides the model that the rest of the franchises should attempt to emulate. Today, I'd like to give you a total of 7 reasons why I believe WWE 2K utilizes the ideal version of this business model. Now, before I continue, I want to place a huge asterisk on this entire list. While I believe WWE 2K has the ideal version of this business model, I do not believe that this business model is itself the right way to sell video games. The best way to sell games is thus: no annual installments. The game comes out when it's ready and not a day before then. You pay one non-recurring payment of $60 and get absolutely everything the game has to offer at release, with all subsequent DLCs adding substantial extra content, and when you buy the game, everything except the online multiplayer and community downloads are guaranteed to be playable forever. However, if you are going to follow the business model of annual installments with multiple editions and microtransactions, then at least do it the way WWE 2K does it. Now, with that disclaimer out of the way, here are 7 reasons why WWE 2K does annual installments right. Number 1. The $60 base price already provides us with substantial content. One of the biggest complaints about AAA games and their multiple editions is that the $60 base price just feels like the most threadbare of gaming experiences. It feels like the demo that you used to get for free to entice you to buy the whole game. Well, with the WWE 2K games, you really don't get that feeling. Your $60 entry fee seems to get you plenty of content. Let's take the most recent installment in the franchise and use it as an example. What do you get just for your $60 base price? Well, in exhibition mode alone, you get a whopping 208 characters to play as. Some initially locked, many playable from the start. This means that just from one-on-one matches alone, there are more than 20,000 potential matchups, considering that neither intergender matches nor mirror matches are allowed in this game. In addition to that, we also have 57 different venues, including backstage areas, to fight in, and again, that is not counting DLC, as well as 81 different match types you can put wrestlers together in. Now granted, you can't do every combination imaginable. As I said, mirror matches and intergender matches are not allowed, and there are more match types that can only be played in certain arenas. So I won't bother figuring out the exact total combinations. Suffice it to say that you could literally spend tens of thousands of hours just in exhibition mode alone and never play the same match at the same venue twice. How's that for a $60 entry fee? Oh, but it doesn't end there. The replay value for this game becomes essentially infinite when you take into account the Creation Suite and Community Creations. In Community Creations, you can download literally hundreds of wrestlers and arenas that other people have designed in the Creation Suite, and the Creation Suite allows you to create wrestlers, arenas, custom match types, and many other things with almost limitless customization options. You can download or create up to 100 wrestlers at a time, resulting in literally hundreds of thousands of possible combinations, considering that you can only have up to 8 wrestlers in a match at once, just on custom wrestlers alone. But wait, there's more! In addition to being able to wrestle in literally hundreds of thousands of combinations of matches, you also have the 2K Showcase and My Career modes, each of which provides story-driven campaigns for you to play through, as well as the Towers mode, which provides monthly, weekly, and even daily challenges for you to complete. It's like the Season Pass in Fortnite, except you don't even have to buy a subscription for it. It just comes with the package with your $60 purchase. As I said before, I would much prefer for everything the game has to offer at launch to be available in one $60 fee. But if you're going to have multiple editions of the game, the least you could do is make the $60 base price actually worth $60. So to all those who insist on this business model, please follow WWE 2K's model. Number 2. It's based on a story-centric TV show, which makes the annual installments feel necessary rather than obligatory. Back in the 1990s and 2000s, sports games were really the only games that always had an annual installment in them, even if the developers didn't have any new ideas. When you're basing your game off an existing IP, the goal of the game is to make it look and feel like the IP you're basing it off of. In the case of sports games, that means making the actual sport portion of the game look and feel just like what you see on TV. However, that also means that the only thing that really changes from one year to the next is which players are playing for which teams. With the WWE games, sure, the WWE roster fluctuates from one year to the next. Hell, there are plenty of wrestlers who are in WWE so briefly, they don't even get the chance to appear in even one game, with a new game coming out every year. But because wrestling is fake, that means a lot more changes besides just which wrestler is on which show. Good guys can turn bad, bad guys can turn good. Wrestlers can take on entirely new personas. Tag teams and stables can be broken up by injury, contract termination, brand splits, etc. And in addition to that, moments happen in wrestling. Historical moments that change the landscape of wrestling forever. Moments like Brock Lesnar ending the streak, or WWE purchasing WCW, or WWE's 2016 revival of the brand extension. These are changes that the games absolutely cannot afford not to incorporate if they are to achieve their goal of being an accurate reflection of the show. And because wrestling is staged, these industry-shaking changes can happen at any time, whereas with sports leagues, barring the occasional steroid scandal, true industry-rocking changes are honestly few and far between. Because of the frequency of these major changes in WWE, it often feels like annual installments aren't frequent enough to keep up with the show it's adapting. The biggest example of this in recent memory came with WWE 2K17. This game came out only a couple months after the aforementioned return of the WWE brand extension, but because the brand extension returned so soon before the game came out, the game was unable to incorporate that huge change into its design. So the game felt outdated literally as soon as it came out. So if there's any franchise for whom its annual installments not only feel necessary rather than obligatory, but actually feel like that isn't enough, it's the WWE series. But what about franchises that aren't based on a TV show, so they don't have to worry about creating accurate representations of that IP? Well, games like Hawk and Dookie and Assassin's Creed do indeed have that advantage going for them. The problem with that is that they suffer too much from creative burnout. The campaigns in these games all really just feel like the exact same plots, just with different characters. The WWE 2K series honestly feels much the same way. It's just Wrestler X making a meteoric rise to the top and winning the world title at WrestleMania. However, I will have to say that WWE 2K series has the advantage over franchises like Cock and Dookie or Butt Buttons Creed because of the fact that it's based on an existing IP. Yeah, the player character making a meteoric rise to the top has been done before, and again, but so has the story been told a million times before on the show. So at least it has that excuse. So yeah, if you're going to make annual installments, the least you can do is actually benefits from an annual release. Number 3. The extra additions are few, linear, and actually feel like significant steps up. Now, if there's one thing I wholeheartedly agree needs to fuck off, it's the multiple editions of a game that come out all at the same time. However, whether I like that business model or not, it's here to stay. However, one thing I absolutely do not accept is how the various editions are numerous, voluminous, and make it practically impossible to figure out which version is best for you. This Ubisoft spreadsheet right here is absolutely baffling. Most of all, there's no one version of this game that allows a player to get all of the content for the game all at once. Now take a look at this breakdown of WWE 2K20. There were only 3 versions of the game. That's half of what Ubisoft had for Assassin's Creed Odyssey, and 2 less than what Activision offered for its 2019 Cock and Dookie game. More importantly, in both of those egregious examples, there was no one edition that allowed you to have everything the game had to offer, whereas with WWE 2K20, not only are there only 3 editions of the game, but each edition has all the features of the last edition. There is one definitive edition that gives you a complete package. So AAA game companies, take note. If you insist on having multiple editions of your game with prices of over $100, at least follow this model. Few editions and make it easy to follow which editions contain which content. Number 4. Loot packs don't charge real money. Now granted, this is the part of the WWE 2K business model that the AAA game industry is least likely to adopt unless government regulations literally force them to adopt it, but I still feel it's worth mentioning anyway. Starting with WWE 2K18, the series started offering randomized moves, taunts, and attire parts for your wrestlers. Beginning with WWE 2K19, we have also had the option of buying the items we want a la carte, albeit for a much higher price than what it would have cost to get those same items in loot packs. Meanwhile, in WWE 2K20, we gained the ability to buy up to 20 loot packs at one time and open every loot pack we had all at once if we were so inclined, instead of having to open them one at a time in a time-consuming manner. In fact, why don't we just have that be an honorable mention, instead of charging extra for the convenience of being able to open multiple loot packs at once? They instead just included the convenience as a standard feature in the next game. How about that? However, what really separates the WWE 2K series from the rest of the AAA industry is that these loot boxes are not gated behind paywalls. You simply have to earn your in-game currency. There is no option to simply buy the virtual currency using VC. This is actually how video games have existed since time immemorial. Randomized rewards for completing tasks in the games have always been a standard feature in many games. Now, the odds of any other AAA video game franchise actually adopting this model without government intervention is essentially non-existent. But let's be entirely honest here, the odds of the rest of the AAA game industry adopting any of the things I'm discussing in this video are already non-existent even as is. Number 5. Items in my career are expensive, but not prohibitively so. So many AAA video game publishers argue that their microtransactions are optional. As I already explained in an older video of mine, I find that to be a load of baloney. Maybe you can acquire the premium currency in-game, but the currency is usually so stingy and hard to come by that paying is the only way to keep that grind from becoming absolutely unbearable. WWE 2K, however, is probably the only franchise I have ever played where the randomized loot packs actually feel optional. The fact that they aren't gated behind a paywall means that the developers don't have a financial incentive to make them the only viable means of getting stuff. You can buy individual moves and attire parts a la carte, and while they are pretty expensive, they don't strike me as so expensive that they are really only there so the game publishers can technically say that the loot packs are optional. You start the game with 30,000 VC right off the bat. When creating your character, that's usually enough to get yourself a finisher of your choosing and a nice pair of tights. For the rest of your character's look and moveset, honestly, I think you guys can afford to just use the loot packs for that. I mean, I can understand having a vision in mind for the character you want to create, but is it really so damn important that you have one specific variation of the DDT, not as a finishing move, but as part of his standard moveset? Is it really necessary that your character has one specific style of armband in his ring attire, otherwise your vision just can't come to life? Why don't you swallow that stubborn pride of yours and just accept the random unlocks for the things that aren't critical to your character build? And for the things that are crucial to your character build that you can't get with the 30,000 VC you were given at the start of the game, the My Player mode is honestly quite generous, both with VC and loot pack tokens. Completing Chapter 1 of the My Career mode gets you 1,395 VC, and that takes about 20 minutes, so you can literally grind about 4,000 VC per hour, which is usually enough to get an extra move and about 2 other attire parts. So to AAA video game publishers, if you're going to insist that your microtransactions are optional, then the least you could do is make it so that earning the premium currency in-game really is a viable option. Number 6. DLC only includes new roster additions or gimmick changes. Fighting games are usually the worst offender of this type of egregious DLC. Using the data they collect from their always online mandate, they realize which characters are the most popular, and then, when the sequel comes out, they block those characters behind paywalls. This is especially predatory in fighting games because fans of those games usually have mains, fighters who they play with constantly and get a lot of practice with. So having their main be gated behind a paywall is especially insidious since they just wouldn't feel right with any other fighter. Wrestling games thankfully don't suffer from this trend. Most wrestling game fans will likely just create their own main in the aforementioned creation suite, so it would be rather difficult for a wrestling game to block your main behind a paywall even if they wanted to. Even if your main just happens to be a member of the default roster, like 616 Entertainment preferring Jeff Hardy, the nature of how wrestling games are made means that the roster of each game has to accurately reflect that of the show. So unless a wrestler is being included as a legend, a wrestler is only going to be in the game if he's part of the show in real life. So the possibility that your main might not be included in the next game is rather slim, and with wrestling games that's to be expected. This is yet another instance where wrestling games have the rest of the AAA video game industry beat by a country mile. Yes, new wrestlers will be added in DLC, however, these are usually wrestlers who recently returned to the company after a long absence, and who weren't with the company in time to be included in the base game, like Bobby Lashley in WWE 2K19. It's quite understandable that these wrestlers would be included as DLC, since it isn't simply expected that these wrestlers should be included in the base game. Now, if you were to take somebody like Seth Rollins or AJ Styles and get them off as Day 1 DLC, despite them being mainstays of the WWE roster for years now, then yeah, it would be just as insidious as with many other fighting games. In addition to not including mainstays of the roster, the 2K Originals DLC also includes actual story content, using stills with text dialogue, but still story content nonetheless. I definitely say that this is worth being included in a DLC, even if they may have half-assed the production value. Besides, at least there's only one version of the Bump in the Night DLC. It's not like they charge you for the DLC and then charged even more for the version of the DLC that has full motion cutscenes and voice acting. That really would have sucked. Number 7. The few paywalls the game does have are fair. Well, fairer than most. When it comes to most AAA games, they always talk about how optional the paywalls are when it's clear that these microtransactions are often the only way the players can actually get a complete gaming experience. Games like Assassin's Creed and Ghost Recon have experience boosters that Ubisoft calls time savers. I'll just put this meme of Jim Sterling on screen for absolutely no reason whatsoever. However, if there is one series that feels like it actually benefits from time savers, it's wrestling games. What do I mean by that? Well, with games like Assassin's Creed, the experience booster they sell as a time saver begins its development by creating a game with a balanced experience threshold. They make it so that the experience points you gain from killing enemies or completing tasks will level you at a relatively decent pace, so that you always stay at approximately the level you will need to be at any given moment in the game. Then, once they found the right balance, they go in and make it so that each enemy you kill and each task you complete gives you 15% less experience than what is actually needed to maintain balance. All so they can charge you extra to get that 15% experience back. Wrestling games have shown us one of the few ways to have a time saver microtransaction that is implemented in an ethical manner. Their Accelerator Pack unlocks everything in the game. All the wrestlers, all the arenas, and all the championships are unlocked instantly if you buy the Accelerator Pack. Bear in mind that the concept of unlockables has existed for almost as long as video games have existed, because that's one of the easiest ways to give the players a sense of progression with their games, especially in games that aren't primarily focused on telling a story. Now, how exactly does the WWE 2K series implement time savers in an ethical manner? Because none of the things we can unlock, at least individually, feel like they're an interminable grind to unlock. If all you really care about is unlocking one wrestler so you can use him as your main, he's relatively easy to unlock. Rather than taking hundreds of hours worth of grinding to unlock any given thing without paying, they instead incentivize the Accelerator DLC by giving us a fuck ton of stuff to unlock. Honestly, if you're going to give me a time saver DLC, this is how I prefer you do it. Give me appetizers at a decent, non-grindy pace, and charge me extra for the buffet. The My Player Kickstarter is likewise a time saver DLC that honestly doesn't feel like that much of a time saver. You get 20 extra skill points that you can use to level up your character at the outset. That's it. You only get 20. This basically takes you about 2% the way towards getting your character to his or her maximum level. And best of all, unless you're doing online multiplayer, you really don't need the Kickstarter at all, because the single-player campaign mode is already perfectly well balanced without it. Speaking of multiplayer, that's my next point. The Road to Glory mode is this game's primary multiplayer mode. There is one day of each month that is set aside as the pay-per-view day. To earn the right to play online multiplayer on that day, you have to earn enough stars on the rest of the month. However, if you don't earn enough stars, you have the option of buying a microtransaction to be allowed automatic access to online multiplayer on the pay-per-view day. So how many stars do you have to earn to be allowed online for free? 20 stars. that's it, you only ever need 20. To put that in perspective for you, you get a 1-star match in less than a minute. So it should literally only take you a couple of hours at maximum to unlock access to the pay-per-view day for free. And if you don't manage to get 20 stars, well, the only thing you miss out on is the right to play online multiplayer for 1 day out of the whole damn month. Honestly, I think you'll live. If you really care so much about playing online multiplayer literally every day, you're almost certainly are going to meet the star requirements any damn way, so quit whining. So in conclusion, I'd say that the WWE 2K series has done a good job of staying ethical with its business model. So many AAA game publishers like to tout their microtransactions as optional, but if there's any game franchise where they actually feel optional, it's with the wrestling games. More importantly, it is one of the few franchises that actually feels like it needs a new game each year in order to keep up. My words are most likely falling on deaf ears, but if any AAA game company executives out there really do care about their customers, I defy you to actually prove it and adopt WWE 2K's system. In the meantime, however, I am Acer Thorn, and I will see you guys later.